What if the biggest surprise in Hudson and Rex Season 9 is not a new case, not a new suspect, and not even a new mystery, but the return of the man fans thought was already gone? For months, one question has followed the series everywhere. Is Charlie Hudson really finished? And now, with Season 9 approaching, a supposed Episode 1 trailer leak has fans wondering if John Reardon could actually return as Charlie. But there is one huge problem. There is no verified leaked trailer confirming his return. So why are fans talking about it? And what if the real clue is not Charlie's face at all, but Rex's reaction? The biggest question surrounding Season 9 is simple. If Charlie Hudson were really coming back, how would the show reveal him without destroying the surprise? That is where this supposed trailer leak becomes so interesting, because a major character return does not always need to be shown clearly. In fact, if the writers wanted to create maximum suspense, they would probably do the exact opposite. They would hide Charlie. They would give fans just enough information to start asking questions, but never enough to give them a definite answer. Think about how television trailers usually work. A trailer is not supposed to explain the entire story. Its job is to make viewers curious. It gives you small pieces of the story, creates emotional moments, introduces danger, and then leaves out the one detail everyone wants to know. And if Charlie Hudson really were returning, showing John Reardon standing clearly in the middle of the trailer would probably be the easiest way to spoil the entire surprise. Instead, imagine something much smaller. A familiar voice, a quick shadow in the background, a person standing behind a door, a hand reaching toward Rex, or perhaps a single frame that lasts for less than a second. Nothing that officially confirms Charlie is back, but enough for longtime fans to pause the trailer and ask the same question: was that him? That kind of mystery would fit perfectly with the way fans have been thinking about Season 9. Charlie was not just another character. His relationship with Rex became one of the emotional foundations of Hudson and Rex. Their partnership was built on trust, loyalty, and years of working together. So if the writers wanted to tease Charlie's return without saying his name, Rex could be the perfect way to do it. Imagine the trailer opening with the new version of the show already established. Mark Hudson is working with the team. Cases are moving forward. The world has changed and everyone is trying to adjust. Then something happens. Rex suddenly stops. He looks towards something outside the frame. The music changes. Another shot shows Rex moving quickly through a hallway. Then we get a glimpse of a familiar figure. And before the audience can see the person's face, the trailer cuts away. That one moment could create more discussion than an entire scene of dialogue. Fans would replay it. They would slow it down. They would compare the figure with old footage of Charlie. They would ask whether the voice sounds familiar. They would look for clues in every frame. And suddenly the question would no longer be whether Charlie is gone. The question would become, what if he is actually coming back? But we need to be very careful here because the word leaked can make a theory sound like confirmed information when it is not. At this point, the script we are working from does not provide verified evidence of an actual leaked trailer showing John Reardon returning as Charlie Hudson. There is no confirmed footage establishing that he is back. What we are discussing is a hypothetical trailer scenario based on the possibility of a surprise return and the questions surrounding Charlie's absence. And honestly, that distinction makes the theory even more interesting. Because even if the supposed trailer reveal were real, the bigger mystery would not simply be Charlie's appearance. It would be the reason behind it. If Charlie suddenly walked back into the story, fans would immediately want answers. Where has he been? Why did he leave? Why did he stay away? What brought him back now? And most importantly, what would his return mean for Mark Hudson? That last question could become one of the biggest storylines of Season 9. Mark has already become part of the show's new direction. He has his own relationship with Rex. He has established himself with the team. The audience has had time to adjust to a world where Charlie is no longer at the center of the partnership. So if Charlie suddenly returned, the writers could not simply pretend that nothing had changed. Everything would be different. And that is where the emotional side of the theory becomes much stronger. Charlie's return would not just be about bringing back a familiar face for the fans. It could create a conflict between the past and the present. Mark represents the new chapter. Charlie represents the old one. and Rex is standing directly between them. That creates one huge question. Who does Rex choose? The answer might sound obvious because of Rex's history with Charlie, but that is exactly why the question could become so powerful. Rex has also developed a new working relationship with Mark. If Charlie returned, would Rex immediately fall back into his old partnership? Would he stay with Mark? Or could the show avoid answering that question completely and use it as the emotional mystery that drives episode 1? That would be a much more interesting story than simply showing Charlie and saying he's back. And if the writers really wanted to shock longtime viewers, they could make the trailer tease that question without ever answering it. Maybe Mark calls Rex, but Rex suddenly runs in another direction. Maybe the team discovers something at a familiar location. Maybe someone says that they need to see something immediately. Then we cut to Rex staring at someone just outside the frame. And the trailer ends. No face, no confirmation, just Rex. That would be enough to send fans searching for answers. But there is another possibility that could completely change the meaning of the supposed reveal. What if the person fans think is Charlie is not actually Charlie at all? What if it is a flashback? What if it is a memory? What if it is a dream? Or what if the trailer is deliberately edited to make viewers believe John Reardon is returning, only for episode 1 to reveal something completely different? That kind of misdirection has been used before because it works. A trailer can create one expectation while the actual episode delivers another. And when a beloved character is involved, even a few seconds of familiar footage can create enormous excitement. That is why this supposed leak needs to be treated carefully. A real leak would require evidence, actual footage, a reliable source, something that could be checked. Without that, we are dealing with speculation, not confirmation. But speculation does not mean the question is not worth exploring, because Season 9 is entering a new chapter, and that gives the writers a very interesting choice. They can fully commit to the new era of Hudson and Rex, or they can find a way to connect the new story with the old one. And if they wanted the biggest possible surprise for episode 1, very few reveals would create the same reaction as seeing Charlie Hudson again. Maybe it would only be one scene. Maybe it would be a surprise at the very end. Maybe Charlie would appear, but not immediately return to the team. Or maybe his appearance would raise even more questions than it answers. And if that is the direction the writers are considering, then the supposed trailer leak may not actually be the biggest mystery. The biggest mystery would be this: why would Charlie Hudson come back now? That question may actually be more important than the supposed trailer itself. Because if John Reardon really were returning as Charlie Hudson, the writers would need a reason that feels bigger than simple nostalgia. Bringing back a familiar character can create a huge reaction for one night. But if the return has no real purpose, the excitement can disappear just as quickly. Charlie would need a story. He would need a reason for leaving, a reason for staying away, and a reason for suddenly returning at this exact moment. And that is where Season 9 could become much more complicated than fans expect. Imagine the season beginning with everyone believing Charlie's chapter is completely finished. Mark Hudson has stepped into the role. The team has adjusted to the changes. Rex has formed a new working relationship with Mark. Even the audience has started getting used to a different version of the series. Then, just when everything seems settled, one piece of information changes the entire situation. Charlie is alive, Charlie is nearby, and Charlie may have been staying away for a reason. Now, to be absolutely clear, there is no confirmed evidence that this is actually what the show is planning. This is a hypothetical version of the story based on the return theory. But it creates an interesting possibility because Charlie coming back would force almost everyone around him to confront the past. And not everyone would necessarily be happy about it. Some people could be relieved, some could be confused, others might even be angry. After all, if Charlie disappeared without giving everyone the answers they wanted, his sudden return would create more questions than excitement. Someone could finally ask the question the audience has been waiting to hear. Where were you? And Charlie might not answer. Not immediately. That single decision could turn his return into a much bigger mystery. The audience would know Charlie is back, but they would not know why. Every conversation could contain another clue. Every strange reaction could suggest that something happened while he was away. And Rex could once again become the key. Because Rex does not need to explain what he feels. His reaction could tell the audience everything. If Rex recognizes Charlie immediately, that could be an emotional moment. But what happens next? Does Rex run toward him? Does he hesitate? Does he look back at Mark? That tiny reaction could say more about the entire Season 9 story than a long explanation ever could. And there is another important character in this situation. Mark. Mark would have every reason to feel conflicted. He has not simply been standing around waiting for Charlie to return. He has built his own place within the team. He has created his own connection with Rex. He has become part of the new chapter. So Charlie returning would create an uncomfortable question. Does the old partnership automatically take over again, or has the show already changed too much for things to return to the way they were? That could give Season 9 an emotional conflict that goes far beyond another police case. It would be about identity, loyalty, and whether people can really go back to the way things were after so much has changed. And the writers would have an opportunity to play with the audience's expectations. Fans might expect Charlie to walk back into the station and immediately take his old position. But what if that does not happen? What if Charlie stays in the background? What if he is working on something completely separate? What if Mark is the first person to discover that he is back? And what if Mark decides not to tell the rest of the team immediately? Suddenly, the return becomes a secret. And secrets are exactly what can keep a season moving forward. The most interesting version of this theory would not make Charlie's return easy. It would make it uncomfortable. Charlie would have to face the fact that the world continued without him. Mark would have to face the possibility that the role he built for himself could suddenly be challenged. Oh, if he mess up these teas, Rex would be caught between two different partnerships, and the audience would be left wondering which version of the team will survive. That is where the trailer could become even more important. If the Episode 1 trailer really wanted to tease Charlie without confirming him, it could focus on reactions instead of faces. A character suddenly becoming silent, Rex staring towards someone, Mark looking confused, a familiar location appearing for only a moment. None of those things would prove that Charlie is returning, but together, they could create a powerful mystery. And there is one more twist that could completely change everything. What if Charlie does return, but he does not come back as the same person? Maybe his time away changed him. Maybe something happened that made him question his old life. Maybe he has information that the team does not have. Or maybe his return is connected to a case that is much bigger than anyone realizes. That would give the writers a reason to bring him back without simply repeating the past, because the strongest character returns are not about pretending nothing happened. They are about showing how much has changed. Charlie could return to a team that remembers him, but no longer needs him in exactly the same way. And that could hurt. For Rex, the situation could be even more emotional. Charlie was once his closest partner, but Rex has also learned to trust Mark. If Charlie returns, Rex may not simply choose one person and forget the other. He could have a bond with both, and that creates a question the trailer might deliberately refuse to answer. Who does Rex follow? If the writers understand how important that relationship is to the audience, they could build an entire episode around that uncertainty. Maybe Mark calls Rex and expects him to come, but Rex does not move. Then Rex hears something. His ears rise. He turns. And suddenly, he runs. Where is he going? Who is he running toward? That could be the moment that makes fans believe Charlie Hudson is finally back. But even then, the show could hold the answer until the final seconds. Because the longer the writers keep Charlie hidden, the more powerful the reveal becomes. And if the trailer ends before showing his face, the internet would do the rest. Fans would analyze every frame, every sound, every shadow, and every reaction. Some would believe it is Charlie. Others would argue that it is a flashback or a completely different character. And that is exactly how a mystery grows. But there is still one problem. If Charlie really is returning, why would the show risk keeping such a major secret? The answer could be simple. Because the surprise itself might be the biggest event of Episode 1. And if that is true, then the trailer may not be hiding Charlie because there is nothing to show. It may be hiding him because the writers know exactly how much his return could change everything. And once Charlie Hudson steps back into Rex's world, there may be no going back. So is Charlie Hudson really coming back in Hudson and Rex Season 9? Right now, the honest answer is that we simply do not have confirmed evidence of an actual leaked episode 1 trailer showing John Reardon returning as Charlie. And that is important because a theory can spread online incredibly quickly. One blurry image becomes a post. The post becomes a rumor. The rumor becomes a headline. And suddenly fans are talking about a return as if it has already been officially announced. But that does not make the possibility any less exciting, because if Charlie really did return, this would not just be another surprise appearance. It could completely change the emotional direction of Season 9. Charlie would be stepping back into a world that has already learned how to continue without him. Mark has established himself, Rex has formed a new partnership. The team has moved forward, and the audience has started adjusting to that new reality. Then suddenly Charlie appears. That would create one of the biggest questions the series could possibly ask. Can the past and the present exist together? And maybe that is why Rex could be the most important part of this entire theory. Charlie and Rex were more than a detective and a police dog. Their partnership became one of the defining relationships of the series. So if Charlie returned, Rex's reaction could tell us more than any trailer dialogue ever could. Would Rex immediately recognize him? Would he run toward Charlie? Would he hesitate? Or would he look back at Mark first? That tiny moment could reveal how much the world of Hudson and Rex has changed. And there is another possibility that we cannot ignore. What if the supposed Charlie reveal is actually a trick? What if the familiar face turns out to be a flashback, a memory, or a completely different moment that has been edited to look mysterious? That would allow the show to create massive excitement without actually confirming a return. In other words, even if fans think they have found Charlie in the trailer, the real answer could be hiding somewhere else. And that is what makes episode 1 so interesting to imagine. If the writers wanted to create a major cliffhanger, they would not need to show Charlie for an entire scene. They would only need one unforgettable moment. A familiar voice, a reaction from Rex, a figure standing in the distance, a door opening. And then the episode ends before we get the answer. Imagine watching that moment and realizing the person everyone thought was gone might actually be standing right there. That would not just create a cliffhanger. It would create a new mystery. Where has Charlie been? Why did he return? What does he want? And how will Mark react when he finally sees him? Those questions could carry far more weight than simply bringing back a familiar character. Because if Charlie Hudson does return, the writers have an opportunity to tell a story about change. Charlie would have to face a team that has continued without him. Mark would have to face the return of the person whose role he stepped into. Rex would have to deal with two important partnerships. And the audience would have to decide whether they want the old version of the show back or whether the new chapter deserves to continue. That is the real emotional conflict. It is not simply Charlie versus Mark. It is the past versus the future. And maybe Season 9 is exactly the right time to explore that. For years, fans have become attached to Charlie and Rex. So naturally, the idea of seeing them together again creates a powerful emotional reaction. But a smart return would not simply repeat the old formula. It would show us what happens when someone from the past suddenly walks back into a life that has already changed. And if John Reardon really is returning, the biggest surprise may not even be his first appearance. It could be what happens after everyone realizes he is back. Because the moment Charlie returns, nothing can go back to normal. Mark cannot simply forget everything that happened. Rex cannot simply erase his relationship with Mark, and Charlie cannot expect the world to have waited for him. That is where the story could become truly unpredictable. So for now, the Charlie Hudson return remains a theory, not a confirmed fact. There is no verified trailer evidence in the material we are discussing that proves John Reardon is back. But if the writers are secretly planning something like this, they have a huge opportunity to deliver one of the most emotional surprises Hudson and Rex fans have seen. And if that supposed trailer really does contain a hidden clue, remember this: do not just watch for Charlie. Watch Rex, because the biggest clue may not be the face we see. It may be the character who recognizes him first. And if Rex suddenly reacts to someone we cannot see, if the music changes, if the trailer cuts away at exactly the wrong